It's Monday the 12th of April 2004.
You put sugar in this?
I did. I got a touch of sugar there.
Hmm?
A touch of sugar.
A touch.
This is the third tape that we've done.
Is it?
Arthur Henry Jephcott. Now, the last time we spoke, Dad, you'd been called up
Yeah,
in 1940, I think,
that's right.
and you were doing your basic training,
Yeah,
infantry training battalion in Exeter,
that's right.
ending up in the regimental barracks in Exeter.
That's right. Higher barracks. There
Right.
were two barracks, but where I was, it was higher barracks.
Higher barracks.
Infantry, the other one was artillery.
Right, now what happened after Exeter? So, take us from a point of when you left Exeter.
Right.
When was that? And
Now I can't tell you the dates without looking at my army books, which I haven't got.
so basic training was over, was it?
Basic training was finished. Oh well, Christmas. Oh, I've got something here. Christmas 1940.
Yeah.
Completion of basic training coincided with Christmas 1940, and leave commenced.
Mm.
And having been fortunate duty guard, 24-hour guard over Christmas Day.
Mm.
And being a smart soldier, I managed to get the stick for the smartest man on parade. Never been known in my life before. Which permitted me to be off duty on Christmas night, apart from a few general duties. Is this on?
Mm.
And after the Christmas, when the first batch of chappies fortunate to be granted leave, having been one of them on Christmas night guard, was given the first leave, and I proceeded home on embarkation leave. And
Home was where?
Harrow, South Harrow.
That was Eastcote Lane, was it?
Hmm?
Was that Eastcote Lane?
Eastcote Lane, that's it. I think it was 10 days.
So this is Christmas 1940.
No, this is Christmas 1939. Wait a minute, 1940, yes, 1940. On return from leave, we marched out of barracks, left Exeter, and after one or two hours in direction, went to a place called Richmond, which, being ignorant in our geography of this country, we thought, some of us thought we were going to Richmond in Surrey, and we would be home every night on leave.
No such luck.
But it happened to be a place called Richmond in Yorkshire. Terrible place.
Mm.
We went there.
What was terrible about it?
Oh, the conditions.
What were you doing there?
Picking up stones off the ground. We lived in nissen huts which were being erected, and each Nissen hut had a little plot of ground outside the entrance, fenced off with some donate wire. People know what that is, donate wire. And we squads living in the Nissen huts were employed to take up their time for better things, to walk around, one carrying a dustbin and 2 or 3 others picking up stones off this plot of land to turn it into a little garden. And we continued on that, various experiences, until a time when we were conveyed to a place called Gurrock, and were put aboard a very large liner of some 7 decks. I'd never seen such a large liner in all my life, and taken aboard. And on the ship we were transported to India.
So how did the choice come about for India? Why did they send you to India and nowhere else? Was it
Don't ask me, the powers that be, so they wanted a convoy sent to India, I suppose.
So it wasn't a question of volunteering for India?
Oh no.
It was just literally you were told what to do?
Well, that's a bit different there, because when posting started, after we'd completed our full training, a lot of the pals of mine were being posted overseas. And I was on a baggage party, loading their gear when they were pulled out of barracks. And I approached the Sergeant Major, a chap named Trotter, asked him if I couldn't be included on not a convoy.
No, whatever, yeah. On board this ship anyway, so you...
No. What do you call it when they put you on posting abroad? I've forgotten the word now.
Well, they shipped you out. I can't think. There is a word, isn't there?
There is a word, yes.
But it was agreed.
He looked at me in surprise and said, "We've got you earmarked for the clerical work here, but I'll have a talk with the adjutant and see what we can do for you."
But you were trained for operating a wireless?
No, I was trained as an infantryman. And a couple of days later he came to me and said, "Yes, we're going to put you on a posting, overseas posting, which you will be informed about later on."
So they put you on this ship. What was its name?
So I went aboard this ship, and
what was it called?
Coincidental, the name of the ship was Empress of Japan. And we proceeded from there to Gibraltar. From Gibraltar we went down onto the Gold Coast, Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Was there just the one ship, or were you supported by the Navy, Empress of
You
Japan?
had one cruiser. I think it was a cruiser. Oh dear me.
that have been the HMS Birmingham?
That's it. And it was going through my mind, was it Birmingham?
Mm.
HMS Birmingham.
So the cruiser escorted you all the way down there?
Yeah, we zigzagged down the Atlantic, roughly the centre of the Atlantic, and eventually turned in at Cape Town, where immediately we were allowed ashore for 4 days, in Cape Town, where the residents were waiting for us at the dock gates and picked their different chaps that they rather liked the look of and took care of us for all that leave. We never put our, well, I never put my hand in my pocket for anything. They bought me everything, they took me out to dinner at night, introduced me to their family, but not the husband because he was a schoolmaster up country.
Do you remember the name of these people?
No. All I do remember clearly from that was we were entertained to our first meal in St Andrew's Church, Cape Town, where all the ladies provided for us and fed us well. And when we took our names and addresses and promised to write to our parents, because we weren't allowed to write from the ship. And off we went, and my parents, and they contacted my parents and wrote them a lovely letter. And that was that. And we were very surprised. We had to go back on board every night. And this particular morning we were barred from going ashore, and all leave was cancelled. We weren't allowed to advise anyone, and the ship just pulled out and made its way to the Indian Ocean, up through Madagascar, Indian Ocean.
So no goodbyes? No goodbyes?
No goodbyes. Oh no, it was a dangerous area around there. We crossed the Indian Ocean and eventually docked at Bombay. And from Bombay we entered one of the very old-fashioned troop trains which had barred windows and locked doors and metal bed bunks in it. We were put in there and we were kept under lock and key and set off and finished up in a place called Mao, Central Province, which were very near
So, you ended up in Mao Central Province.
Yes.
Now, who were you with? What battalion or regiment were you with?
No, we just went to a training school, a very last training
Where?
school.
In Mao?
No, Mao itself was an area, it's a place, it's on the map, but it was the whole, this is where you can't visualise India. You can't think of the immense size of it. And everything was all painted white. And the green grass, the Maya Dam, M-I-A, you'd have to look that up.
So they sent you to training then?
Yeah.
More training? For what?
To signals, a big signal school it was, so obviously we were earmarked, a number of us, some went elsewhere, but...
You were earmarked for signal training?
Well, someone, among others, not on my own, earmarked for signal training, and we had intensive training.
And what did that involve?
It involved sending, sitting at a desk with a pencil and scrap paper in front of you, and a lot of the time was spent just drawing circles, scribble. And this was apparently in order to get you all writing the same boldly. So you all maintain this a very bold handwriting or print. And we did that, and of course we did radio operating, Morse code, the various instruments of operation, line instruments, and the various types of radios, but only on a small scale. My first radio was an FS6, which was an old Australian type. But anyway, we practiced on those, and we went to school every day.
So you weren't asked whether you wanted to join the signals?
No.
How did you feel about this? What was going through your mind at the time?
You were all too bloody timid in those days to argue about it. You just did as you're told. But I recall very clearly our instructor looking at me, very smart man, as everyone was in India.
British soldier?
Yeah. You were immaculate in your outfit. You were starched, all your uniform was starched, and you got Dobie itch in places you didn't like because of the starch they used in it. And you slept in long barrack huts with wooden and string beds made up with mosquito nets, which was a crime not to use. You had to put them up. The dough, you'd have all your clothes you'd strip off at night, and the Dobie Walla would come in and...
Who was a native, an Indian?
Indian, yes. And cart all your dirty clothes away. And next morning there was all starched, clean clothes. That's anything from your underpants right up to your shirts and your trousers and your shirts and everything. In fact, you virtually crackled when you moved, and of course very, very sleek streaks in your trousers. And you wore that all day long. You had a slight change of clothing at night. You had to wear long trousers because of mosquitoes and things like that. And you just lived and did nothing but Morse code from morning, noon to night. If there was any misbehaviour during the instruction, you were told to get a flag, signalling flag, and you'd be marched outside, and you'd have to do several Morse codes, flag, as a punishment. So you behaved yourself. You didn't want that, but you did anything from radio. That's all key work. Morse key.
Morse code key. Morse code key.
Morse code.
Yeah.
Yeah, Morse code.
When you say key work, yeah.
Thumb.
Yeah.
And anything to do with Morse, you did. Anyway, you did key work. That's the prime part of it. You did line work. That's any instruments that were joined by a line. Flags, telescopic reading, helio, simplex and dimplex. That means single mirror and double mirror. So when the sun's over there and you want the signal there, you have one mirror here and that one reflected onto this.
So it's flashing light signalling.
Yeah.
And you were doing semaphore as well, and Morse.
We didn't do semaphore, that's obsolete. it was all Morse.
So Morse
and
with
silence,
flags.
just to drum Morse into, more so, you did a silencer, which is an old railway signalling instrument. And you didn't read sound, you didn't read dots and dashes, you read pauses. Instead of dots, you read the pause between a signal. And once you got the hang of that, you were okay. But if you lost the rhythm of it, quite frequently you'd have to go out of the room and come back to get back into the rhythm. But
so what did you think this was all leading up to? Or didn't you think about things like that?
we just knew we were to be signallers. That's what we were told.
You had no concept of what was happening. Can you think of any of your workmates, any of the names, the people that you were working with?
Yes. I'll have to think a bit more about that. But that's funny.
Any particular...
No particular one there, no.
No particular instances, nothing was going on, it was just straight training.
It was guards.
No incidents, no attacks, nothing like that. There was no...
Oh no.
No concept of the enemy.
We are in India. We are in India.
Central India, where is now province? Was it? Where was now province? Was it in the centre or was it east or west?
Central province. I'll show it you on the map later on. In fact, I've got my atlas at home. I think marked up in the different places.
So how long were you training there before you shipped out somewhere else?
Well, the system of training was that you were given basically 3 months training. But towards the first month was fairly open, was training, intensive training. But you had a test at the end of the month. And if you were any good, you attained a certain level. You didn't do 3 months training. You did a little over 2 months training. Then you had another test, and you lost a little more of your training time. In other words, if you were good, your training was cut down. But you've got to bear in mind a lot of these things we were using, flags, helio, only once or twice helio.
So helio is a flashing light, is it?
Helio?
You're flashing Morse with light, are you?
No. It's all atmospheric. It's not dots and dashes in the air. It's
radio signal.
Radio signal. Radio signal. You do, and also speech. You can do speech as well. But you operated various radio sets, not just the one, multiple. But you only use the one for your tests and things like that. And you had a short message to pass, and you had to send, I think the first test was 10 words a minute.
In Morse, yeah.
In Morse. And most of them stayed at 10 words a minute. Then you could be upgraded, which fortunately I was. And I've forgotten what speed. The speed was open, what you could do you operated, because you were on what they called an open group with various sets dotted about the countryside, and you tune into them and that. And of course between yourselves on groups like that, you work up your own speeds between yourselves. If anyone in that group shows off with speed, there's always ways of taking the mickey out of him. Let him have some real top speed. So, you know, they soon pack up and get sensible. It's no use sending 12, 14 words a minute to a poor old blighter who can just reach 10, you know.
Because he can't read it, yeah.
Can't read it.
It's wasted.
And there's so much you miss, and if you're not careful.
So you finished your training at what level?
Operator 3. That is the basic. rate.
And
At
at the end of training, what?
There were 3 possible grades in the signal parlance.
So you were now a member of the Signal Training Corps
Yes,
with no rank as such. You
I was a member then, a signaller in the signals. You drop the training corps.
So this was sort of the middle of 1941,
Yeah,
presumably.
Yeah. Before that really slightly. 'Cause,
Well, did you get any leave? What did you do?
oh, you didn't get any leave? No.
You were there confined
No place to go.
to
There's
your area.
places to go, but you never got any leave from there.
Mm.
And we used to go to Methodist Church on a Sunday if we were free.
What contact with the natives? None at all, just the ones that worked on the...
They were very, very
Okay.
strict there, because if a Indian rank spoke to you, he stood to attention and addressed you as Saab. And I used to think that was very, very unfair indeed. But you weren't allowed to strike them. They used to, but you weren't allowed to strike them, certainly in my days. But they had to stand to attention, and you would get it in the neck if you didn't make them stand to attention. You didn't have to make them, they knew straight away.
Did you start to learn any language of theirs?
Torah, only barrack-room language, that was all. You never had any time to yourself to other languages.
Was it enjoyable, or was it something that you really...
Well, I quite enjoyed it.
You did?
I quite
You,
enjoyed it.
you found it challenging? Certainly different to what you had been doing.
Yeah.
So, what happened after
I
training?
took tests, I did well in tests. I was sent back to Mao, several thousand miles, into India. And from a place called Ranchi, to do a special advanced radio test actually. And that's where I got I felt bad when I was travelling. I got a dose of blinking malaria. And I had to go in hospital. And I didn't take the complete test, but they marked me on my theory on the main work I'd done, and I passed okay, so I'm pleased about that. But another time I was very bad, I had to go back to Mao there. I was very, very ill, and that was after my first spate in the jungle. And I had a rough old time there, but in fact I nearly pegged out with malaria, and they got me in bed there, and when I came to, there was the nurse. Her rank was a lieutenant, I think. She was officer rank. There were 3 doctors, one on the major. There was the orderly, all standing around me, and was I sweating. I came to, and
But this was just after training or during training?
This is just after. This is no. I get disrupted in this because the sequence. I'm telling you things as they come to my head and slightly out of.
Right, if I can read what what I've got here is the book that we put together some years ago.
Yeah.
And it says here that you were posted to the 19th Indian Division of the Royal Signals.
Yeah, that's further on.
That's Secunabad. So that's much later.
Yeah. Not much later, but later.
So you had a bout of malaria.
Yeah.
So presumably you were cured, or not cured, but certainly posted fit again.
Yeah, the chaps in the ward thought I was going to kick the bucket. The doctors, as soon as I came round, and that's funny, it sticks in my mind so much. You know the Gillette safety razor blades? I was turning those over in my mind, and I'm visualising Gillette razor blades, and I wanted to get one. And every time I got hold of one, it was joined to the next one. And so it went on. And, well, the blinking bed steamed, not only from me, but other blokes were the same that had malaria, you know, if it was bad.
Did that teach you a lesson, though, about mosquitoes, or?
Well, you didn't. You eventually took a few liberties, you know. Things. But if you got caught in the training areas, you're on a charge, bang. And eventually, up forward, you did take liberties. There it was.
So coming out of that, where did you go next then?
Well, now where I got to, I'm just generalising about Mao and things. Now, from Mao, we went to Secunderabad, Trimmelderry. And a brief stay there, but it was a totally different atmosphere to the training school. I think you've seen pictures of the training school, a barrack room, stone floored and all the beds and that lined up. One bed with another, absolutely dead in line. But that, when you went to Trimmelderry, 19th Indian Division was being formed, and you got a bearer. One bearer dealt with, I think it was 3 of us, and your bearer would sit. There's a balcony outside the barrack room, stone, with arches, you know. You could sit in, not sit in the, but the bearers and that, and the charwallahs and that used to sit under these bearers. But your bearer would sit outside and acted as a punkawallah. And this would pull a cord and pull this fan inside. He used to do that, but he used to look after you also immaculately. Clothes, it's a Saab PT morning, so in the morning you'd be woken up with your cup of chow. They put up the mosquito nets. If you wanted to shave, the not Bobaji, doesn't matter. The nappy, I think it was, would come along and whilst you're in bed shave you. Then you got up and you put your PT kit on, which is all laid out on the box into your bed. Do your PT, come back from PT, and you tell your bearer what parades you got, whether it's radio, whether it's flags, or whether it's doing drills or what, and he'd put the appropriate apparel, clothing out for you. You'd chuck your PT down on the floor and put your working outfit on, and he would adjust all your shoulder straps and your equipment. The only thing he wasn't allowed to touch was your rifle, and he wasn't allowed to touch that at all. But we used to have mounted equipment, bandoliers with all the pouches on, belts and that, and they used to polish those. And they, well, you've seen them in some of my pictures, they glittered like a new pin. And, but they were the only things.
So why were you treated like that? I mean, surely not everybody had that sort of...
No, because that was a regular regiment. It was just turning from regular
Mm.
procedures, and that's the way they carried on in those days,
Mm.
and we followed suit. But it wasn't long, and of course upstairs was it upstairs anyway, it doesn't matter, was billiard rooms and things like that
Mm.
for recreation.
So it's quite easy going then, really.
Yes, but strict at
Mm.
the same time. You were waited on, but that didn't diminish that it was up to you to make sure that that bearer had got you looking
Mm.
bang on. You know.
Mm.
The bearer would always get you things from the bazaar. For instance, if you went to some items you had, you bought yourself,
Mm.
that you preferred to them, particularly this long socks. That, and they used to rob you in the bazaar with that, but you get your bearer to go and give him 12 annas or a rupee at most, 16 annas, say Jiao, bazaar, socks mukta, you know, and tell him. He'd go, he'd bring us some of the best socks back and change as well.
Mm.
And he'd make a bit. That was a bit
I'm sure, yeah.
But if you went,
Mm.
you'd have to haggle.
You wouldn't know what you were paying for.
No, and it's not until you've been there a little time when you know quality of things and whether you're being rooked, and then you just get cross as a markero, you know, so you're going to hit them and things like that. There are lots of things like that went on, which was...
So where did Johnny Gilbert fit in with all this?
Oh, he was at Trimmelgurry,
Mm.
and he was at Trimmelgurry. Well, the so-called Archer, I've got a feeling he was a son of Archer, you know. I don't know my jockeys or anything like that, but he was a jockey and he come from the Archer family. But whether he was the famous Archer, I don't know. I don't really know the circumstances of it, because I didn't know anything who was a jockey, and he wasn't a blinking jockey, you know.
But he was there. What was he doing there?
Oh, when he was there, he took part. We still did training. We still followed on with our training. It was always Morse code, you know.
So he was a signal
Yes.
person as well.
And when it came to posting, a chap named Archer, Johnny Gilbert, one or two, but those two, there were two or three of them that had been associated with the officers' horses, mounts, and they were kept back to, so we understand. You've only got to go by my understanding of what I understood happened, you know, when we left. But anyway, we then we were moving off to, I think it was Trimble-Gary.
Well, I've got Jeff was posted to Rangoon at Armanaga. Here written down.
That's right, I'm getting on to that, just a moment. I'm just about on it. I'm trying to think of another sequence. Chap named Taylor. A nice chap, but simple chap. He was a dispatch rider of our section. And we were going to move out. We didn't know why we were moving out. I mean, we were moving out, but we were told that every man jack would be on that convoy. There'd be no excuses of anyone. The old CO said they will be on that convoy. And I can remember poor old Taylor sitting on the steps of where the billiard hall was. And I spoke to him and I said, "What's the matter, George?" Oh, he said, "I do feel bad." See, so I did go to Rogers, officer. He said, "No, every man's got to travel." I said, "Oh, poor devil, you know, his motorbike, he can't ride motorbike in that state, his stomach, you know.
Mm.
He said, all right, so Rogers, the officer, and myself took over the vehicle, which was S1. That's how I come to be in S1, because it was the officers, basically, although I was responsible for it. And we, various turns of driving the motorbike, and he was conveyed in the first aid then. He travelled with us all that night. When we mustered in the morning to move out again, I saw Taylor, and had he changed? He looked absolutely pale and ill, and he seemed to have lost weight and went through the lines, these trucks that were lined up, and he was standing there. The poor chap died, and it was dysentery. I don't know what type of dysentery, and that was the first chap I saw die.
First loss.
And we went to a place called Trimmelgerry, Armanaga.
Armanaga, yeah. Fort.
Fort, yes. And,
with the 23rd Indian Division.
23rd Indian Division. And there I met quite a number of chaps that I joined a regiment with. And a chap next to me, we were being interviewed by this officer who was taking us over. He was just asking chaps different things. He looked at one bloke, Foxwell, you've heard the name. He said to him, "Could you ride a motorbike?" He said, "Yes, sir." "Right, you're a corporal." Just like that. And he was a corporal from the day he was in the army, virtually, until he came away. And he did, when I say he did fairly well, he had quite a reasonable number. You know, he lived in a lot of the time, earlier time, he lived in a little dugout of his own by the foot of the Barrack River, where that led up to the chocolate staircase with umpteen hairpin bends on it, frightening in itself, which was built there.
So you're posted to Rangoon at Armanaga Fort?
No, I was not posted to Rangoon. I've never even mentioned Rangoon.
That's what it says here.
Well, how it got there, I don't know. I know that was written in haste, that book. But you've also... Oh no.
Then on to Jancy.
My book, I'll try and remember to give a write-up out of that, which I wrote subsequent to that.
Yes. And
you've never had it, to whoever takes me home, and I can put my fingers on it. But I went to Armanaga, where the Duke of Wellington had a bit of a do on what the hell he was doing there. I never did find out the history, but there was a monument just on the edge of the moat that Wellington had fought there. And he did quite a bit of battling in India, you know, Wellington. And then we didn't stay terribly long there, and not a comfortable place. But next we knew we were being posted away and finished up at a place called Jancy. And there we were kitted out. We realised then that we were moving about. And we got kitted up, and Sergeant Lee's nasty bit of work. He was a nasty bit of work. The vehicles were being equipped and different tools and different things and guns. And anyway, when we were going to move off, we were due for an inspection. He had S1, the truck, and I was in that section. And I was supposed to be driving. So anyway, he decided he was driving, and I would, that's how I got into the driving with it, see. And anyway, news went round that the big white chief was going to inspect the unit before it pulled out. Immediately came up to me, he said, Jephcott, he said, you're the driver of this truck. I was the driver whilst the big white chief did the inspection. Bastard, you know, that's the sort of blokes regular soldiers were. And I'll tell you this, without exception. And you may say, Dad, you're always crying, ashamed to other blokes. They were not very nice people, a lot of them. But he was one of the worst. And he was mad, really. He lived on gin. Every morning, a 3 parts cut. And I've never known a man turn so quickly in temper. He'd be all right talking like this, you know, walk outside, do a gym, it'll come back. Always doing that. Foul temper, you know. Anyway, we used to give him, when we could, we used to make it uncomfortable for him. We got him on the wrong train once, and didn't tell him. And the train went, the main train went to one place and we went to another. And he calmed down a week. I think he tumbled, what was it, you know. He was having a rough do. But anyway, we got to Guernsey, and I went into a little Guernsey had a fort there, and on the Maya Dam, they had a little hut which they turned into a, I don't know who they were, but turned it into a little tea shop, you know. And I went in there one morning and sat down, there's a rough bloke in the corner, sitting, and I sat down and got talking. I said, where do you come from? He said, King's Lynn. I said, oh, I said, was it King? Yeah, King's Lynn. I talked, and he said, oh, he said, we were talking about our families, that was it. He said his father was a shoemaker in King's Lynn. I said, you come from King's Lynn? He said, yes. I said, your father was, I said, you got a brother? Twin brother? He said, yes. I said, what's your name? Funnel. I said, I went to camp with you, and I camped with him when we were young lads together.
Scouts.
And quite strange that. So I met him, and anyway, from there we pulled onto an open siding, flats, you know, open wagons, just flat wagons with stanchions along the side and chains. Just that's all. Open, just chains, and you went up on this ramp on your vehicle, and then drove over the bumpers onto these flats. And there again, I had a bit of a set to with officers, because when you went over, I've got to be careful with this. I haven't spilt any.
No, that's okay. You'd be in trouble if you have.
I know. I'm getting a bit bewildered, a bit disjointed with
Oh,
this.
don't know.
Hmm?
That's all right.
Anyway, you had to pull up onto these flats. And of course, as you went along one, you went over bumpers
Mm.
where they protruded above the level of the floor. And this little whippet of an officer there told me to stop. And I'm on top of a bumper, you know, my front wheels bounced on top of the bumper. I didn't know what to do. He kept on shouting, doing the different orders. Anyway, it finished up, I finished up on bumpers, and the wheels spun. Of course, the wheels turned down between the bumpers.
Mm.
And he started giving me a going over. And another officer, I think he was a captain, gave him a bollocking.
Mm.
He said, look, the poor chap doesn't know what he's doing. He's having too many orders. He's not to stop, he's to pull on.
Mm.
I said, but I can't now. He said, I understand that. So next I knew, they pulled a crane up, brought it on the front, lifted me up and pulled me. I never heard any more from this little. And they got me out of that. And we were on that ruddy train for 20 odd days, all the way. Pooping on the side of the road on the way.
Where were you going?
We didn't know.
Mm.
We didn't know. And here and there we did stop for at a station where they'd laid on a pucker meal for us. Otherwise we had make do rations and had them on the train, You'd pull up and a meal would be laid on. And I think same time on one occasion, or two cases, they'd laid on a bath for us, you know. Because in the army I'd be careful about getting lousy. One of you got lousy, a lot of you did. And anyway, we went on to a place, and I can't remember it so quite distinctly, you know. But we got to this place, all tented, as far as you can see, all tented. A place called Ranchy. And there again, you were doing drills and what you did this period of time, I don't know. It seemed that you were just wasting your ruddy time, you know, you weren't fighting a war. You didn't know what was happening, but I suppose arrangements were being made and everything. And it was there the old RSM loved his cricket. And they used to put matting down. Used to put matting down to play on, because it was all sandy and mardan, you know, it wasn't ground for cricket, but they put this coconut matting down. And Sergeant one weekend said, anyone in this section play cricket? I said, oh, I like cricket. Would you like a game tomorrow? I said, yes. Oh, right, RSM's compliments, but would you play for his team? Now, I'm only a signalman, and all the team are usually made up of sergeants, corporals at the least, but sergeants or sergeant of that level, you see. So anyway, I had to play the old RSM, and I did well. I played well. And every match then I was invited. I was from the batsman. He come up to me and say, "Oh Jeff, RSM's compliments when you play cricket for it." You know. And I got on well with that RSM.
What was his name? Do you know?
Eh?
Do you remember his name?
No, I can't think. I've tried to think of that time again. But he could have put me on a charge a couple of times, but he didn't. I can see him. He was a territorial soldier, which was unusual for someone of that rank to become a warrant officer in the regular army. You know. But still, I suppose I was getting a bit short of them then, and they opened the gates. But he was all right with me. He was quite all right with me. And we just mucked about there. Most of the boys trying to seduce the women, but the women and their standards of behaviour was much higher than ours, and would have none of it. And of course, the chaps didn't understand the religious aspect of these people, but they were very, very, I'm not saying there weren't loose women in India, far from it, but you didn't get, you know, it wasn't the sort of thing that went on every day, but they were a very high standard of behaviour for women. And from there, we pulled out, we went over the, can't remember exactly where we got to, all round the blinking place.
I've got a name here, Brahmatra.
Yeah, Brahmaputra.
Brahmaputra.
What's the name of the...
In Imphal.
Pardon?
In Imphal.
No. You're pushing me forward too much. Can we leave it just for a little while?
No worry. Okay, well, moving on then.
Switch it off.
Okay.
I've got to get my wits about me. I've gone out of gear at the moment. I'm sorry, Jess. It's a long while ago to remember.
Okay, we're starting again. Right, so as you were.
Where were we? Where did we leave?
Well, you were playing cricket. RSM should have been put on charge.
That's right. Yes.
But you got away with it.
Anyway, we then had to move out, and we moved off down to the Brahmaputra. And our vehicles and all the gear and everything was transported across on rafts, homemade rafts. And we did have a little outboard motor on each side just to get us across, which we did, to Dimapur. And from Dimapur, which was the base, became the base of supplies, onto the track that had been built through, and the Americans were working on it, and took us up over Kohima, where the Yankees were very, very busy building at that time, and down on the other side into the plains of Imphal. Where we formed the 23rd Indian Div. Now there you'll have to give me a chance to think carefully for some little time, because it was so mixed up then, because we got involved in things.
How was your health? How was your health?
It was then that I got malaria.
You got malaria at that point? How badly?
It was bad. I went right back. Boys, I'd lost a lot of chaps already. When I say lost, a lot of the chaps in the section had already suffered malaria or were suffering malaria, and it was rife. In fact, I think it's correct to say that the division that I was in was nearly brought to a halt through epidemics of malaria. and it was severe. And if you read in the history of that battle in Burma, that they were beset terribly with malaria. That things were, all we had to take then was yellow tablets, Mepaquin, I think they were called, or Mepaquin, yes. And
there was a field hospital?
yes, through field hospitals, which was, they did their best for us, but yeah, it was a bit rough and ready. But some of us were brought back to Kohima, where there was a big British hospital, field hospital.
I'm going to have to hold it there, Dad, because we've come to the end of the tape.